What's up everyone, Fritz here again with another episode of Sneakerhead Ambition, and today I'm going to cover a topic that I think is very important, and I'm going to go over what I think are the biggest factors in someone's success when they get into botting and reselling. I'm not going to be doing like the traditional, you need a bot, you need proxy. Like I have those videos up, other people have videos up on that. I think that's a well discussed topic and rather obvious, right? You obviously need a bot, you need the resources, but I'm going to be going over what I think actually really matter in your success and how much and to what extent each of these factors do matter. Now, before I go into the categories that I'm going to break down, I do want to obviously say that this is subjective, right? This is my opinion. This is not a fact, right? This wasn't like written up by the National Botters Association. So this is my opinion, and this is just kind of what I have assessed over, or kind of what I've observed over the past 3 to 4 years being in reselling and botting, and what I feel has led to my success, the success of others, and the lack of success that some other people might have had over that time. Also, I want to make clear that going into this, right, I'm going to have 4 categories that I think all really matter and play a factor in someone's success. And just like a sport, so like with basketball, you could look at somebody like Shaq, right? He's going to score really well in like post scoring. Shooting, he's going to do really poorly, right? There are people that do bot that have some of these skills or these attributes, a lot of them across the board, right? There are some, like I said, that have 2 of them and really lack in other areas. You can be successful with any level or amount of these kind of categories, like I said, that I'm going to go over. But these are areas that I would look at if you're looking at how you can improve as a reseller. I would really look at how you can improve yourself within these categories. And it's kind of a framework to possibly assess yourself and assess other people and how they resell. So anyways, like I said, the 4 categories are not set in stone. This is just my opinion after just kind of viewing the landscape for a couple years and having been in this and gone from having no bots to pretty much every bot that I would want. So, I'm going to go over that, and this is what I think that has led to my success and what I've seen other people, be really good at, not good at, just again, my assessment of the situation. So that would be the number one thing that I'm going to go over is going to be kind of your mindset and your how well you learn, how quickly you pick up skills. That is definitely a factor. Number 2 is going to be the capital that you are coming into this with, right? So kind of your financial situation. Number 3 is going to be the network that you build around yourself. So there's a lot of different branches of that I will go into. And finally, number 4 is going to be your botting resources. So the bots, proxies, all of that, and the access that you have to that. Now I'll go into these categories and kind of break them down one by one. I do want to mention though that obviously some of these play upon each other, right? So obviously, right, the bigger your network, usually the more access you're going to have to proxies, bots, different things like that. Now, just because you have those 2, if you have no capital, like actually 0 capital, you can have all the access to people you want in the world, and maybe your network is built up through ACO and slots and things like that, right? So there's a lot of different kind of, these play on each other. They all matter. So I'm going to break those down one by one now. So the number one thing I'm going to go over again is kind of your mindset, right? Your skill development. This is basically like, are you a quick learner? Now, this is obviously affected by a bunch of different things, right? One, you can definitely, there are people, right? I know this for a fact, right? You can read about it. You can just observe in the general public. There are people that have a growth mindset. That means that they really believe that everything can be learned, because that's the truth. But they go about learning differently, right? Like I understand when things don't go well in botting, to be frustrated with the bot and the proxies. But like I've said many times on this channel, if other people are hitting with the bot and the proxies and you're not, the factor in there that's off is you. So it's not easy to swallow sometimes, but you always need to be like, what did I do wrong? Because if other people are hitting and other people are having success, you need to process that as I'm making a mistake, no matter how frustrating it is. So that is definitely a massive factor. I see some people come into this space, get extremely frustrated, and not be able to take feedback, right? Like when people are telling them things, they just get frustrated, they flip out at somebody in the group, a dev, this or that, when they've got to assess what they're doing wrong. So I'm going to go into that a little bit more, but it really does matter, and your prior knowledge matters too, right? I'm not going to lie. If you are in Discord regularly, if you know what a server is, how to set one up, if you know what proxies are, and just generally understand computers, it's going to be a lot easier. I didn't have any of that prior knowledge when I came into this, so just know that you can succeed and learn, but that is going to matter. So, right, your starting point and your knowledge of this general kind of area, right, computers, all of that. And then also just how well you learn and how willing you are to put a lot of time into this, fail repetitively, and take the feedback no matter how frustrating it might be. Now, I try to be honest with you all and transparent, and I really do feel like one of the big factors, obviously, in skill development is the amount of time that you have been practicing something. So you need to remember too that this is going to take time. I don't think that, like in my opinion, obviously there are outliers, right? There are people who do pick up botting and do really well right away. I'm not gonna lie to you. Those people exist, but they're few and far between. The majority of people, it took me about a year to really feel confident whatsoever in what I was doing, right? It didn't take me a year to hit, but it took me a year to have a clue what I was doing, be able to kind of vocalize that, be able to break down issues, be able to kind of analyze what the issues were within a drop, and not just feel like I pressed play, I don't really know, I'll try next time. It takes a lot of time. So I would just keep that in mind, right? I'm not trying to scare people off. I don't think that this is something that can't be done, right? I did a video on is botting dead. I don't believe that, but I think it's hard. And I think that you just need to know coming in, like I did. I watched a lot of videos, and even though I knew it was gonna be hard, I was like, all right, I'm gonna be able to get this in like 6 months. I didn't, right? It took me longer than that. So you need to know that, right? A big factor in your success in this is how well you know botting, right? How many drops have you run? There's a big difference, right, between somebody who's run 5 drops and somebody who's run 50 drops. There's also a big difference between somebody who's run 50 drops and somebody who's run 500, right? There's a big gap between those, right? And it might seem like, oh, somebody hit this one time. But again, it really is something that's going to take time, and you need to really just realize that a big factor in this is going to be how well you know the skill. And the only way you can get practice with this skill is by running. It's really hard to practice running. Like, it's not easy to just go out and shoot hoops, right? Like you're playing basketball. It's pretty easy to practice shooting threes. It's really hard to practice botting, not in the game. So just really understand that this is a difficult skill to learn, and it's gonna be very frustrating, and you need to be prepared for that mentally. I've seen a lot of people come into this, do really well on a drop or two over a couple months. Things change. They're not happy, right? It was nice and easy. Everything's fun when everybody's winning, and they don't adjust, right? They're not, you know what I mean? They're not nimble enough, right? They're not able to pivot, and they're not able to adjust to whatever companies are doing. I remember there was a big scare that botting was over in December. It's not true, right? That's not the case. So again, you need to have the gumption, right? The ability to kind of weather these storms mentally, and just know that if you're going to be good at this, you need to be able to adapt. You need to just build up your resources. I'll get to that on number 4, right? Over time, and build up your knowledge. And just, you'll be able to adapt to the situation more easily the longer you've been in the game. And all you need for just proof of this, right, is just go on to Twitter after a drop, right? Maybe 10 to 20% of the time, the complaints are valid, right? Sometimes bots do really flop, right? Sometimes the bot doesn't open until 15 minutes into a drop. You can put that on the dev. But I've also talked about that in the past, that you only really attack the dev if that becomes a trend, right? Not a habit, but a trend, right? If it happens one time, like it happened a couple weeks ago with Wrath, whatever, right? You've got to get that that's going to happen sometimes. If it happens for a month straight and you're paying a lot of money for it, I can start to see at that point that that's a trend, and you might not be happy with that. But you do need to just kind of look at Twitter, right? You can see that people freak out every single drop saying this don't work, these don't work, this isn't connecting. It's probably you. So again, you need to have the mindset, again, no matter how uncomfortable, not fun it is, to be like, every time you didn't hit, what did I do wrong? Sometimes the answer is you don't have enough resources, right? So again, number 4, we'll get to that. But sometimes if you're running one bot and the bot flops, the problem is you're running one bot. That's hard if you're just starting off to be like, well, I don't have 2 to 3 bots. Yes, correct. Because you haven't been in the game that long to acquire all of those resources. So just keep in mind, you need to be prepared to always take it on yourself, figure out what you did wrong, ask questions, be curious, and eventually that will lead to you improving and doing much better. And lastly, in this category, I just want to emphasize how much this is a skill. I'm going to use this example again. I think, I don't know what y'all think of these, but I think it's easy to break things down like this. I'll use Call of Duty. All right. You could give somebody that's never played the game, right? Think about a girl in some class that's never played Call of Duty. You could give her every perk, every gun, everything, right? You remember the first time you played that game. It doesn't matter if you give somebody every tool that there is, right? The best server, the best bot, the best proxies, the best Gmails. If they really don't know what they're doing, it doesn't matter. Now, obviously people aren't that unaware when they come into this, but you do need to think about it like that, right? You can buy all the things in the world, right? All the things, right? All the bots, I'm gonna get to those. Again, I've brought that up a lot in this category, but you can get all that stuff. But if you don't know what you're doing, it doesn't matter. So you really need to view this as a skill. It is something to learn, right? The lingo is something to learn. If you don't know how to communicate what's going on, right? That takes time. It takes time to be able to assess what's kind of going wrong mid-drop. I remember when I started off botting, there was no chance I was gonna adjust, right? Once the drop started, I pressed play. That was kind of it, because I didn't know what was really going on. I knew how to set up, right? At that point, I'd set up a lot, but I didn't really know how to assess what was happening. It was too much, right? There's too much going on. I don't know the channels to monitor. It's a lot. But again, if you view it as a skill, it's something that every time you get a chance to run, you get a chance to practice, you get a chance to break down what you did wrong, and you get a chance to learn from it. So I know this doesn't have much to do with actual botting, but I can't stress enough that if you don't have this, you're not gonna do well in this over time. Not to say that you couldn't hit 1 or 2 drops, make some money, but you're not gonna be able to run a business, and you're certainly not gonna be able to continue to hit over time as things go wrong and you need to adjust. And just like with any skill, again, the more you're practicing it, the faster you're gonna get better. So try to bot as often as possible, right? Obviously don't just waste your money. That's another discussion, but you want to try to run as often as possible to get practice, even if it's with cards that like aren't gonna check out, but you are just practicing getting to the end point and getting that checkout. You wanna practice as much as possible, and you want to be in these Discord chats as often as you can. It's gonna help you learn. The more you're in there, the more you listen to other people who are hitting and are better than you, and the more you talk to them, the more information you're gonna get and the more you're gonna learn. So again, put as much time as you can into learning this, because it's a skill, and the more time you put in, the faster you're gonna get better, which is obviously the goal, to speed this up as fast as we can. All right, moving on to number 2, and that was capital, right? So we're gonna talk about capital and how much of that you have to deploy within your business. Now, you can start off botting, I really believe, with a couple $100, right? You can get into a group, you can kind of be in there, you can try to hit manually, you can learn at an appropriate rate, you can eventually get a group buy, yada, 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 right? I've gone over that. I'll have more videos on that, on what you should do, first bot, all that stuff. I would also be lying though if I said that money doesn't matter, right? Money does matter. The amount of capital you have does matter. And that's a big factor. Again, you don't need a lot. You could have, a great mindset. You could have a great network. You could have all the bots and everything in the world. But if you don't have any money, you can't do anything. Now, obviously that isn't the case, right? There are levels for each of these categories, but the amount of money you have does matter, right? So you can do this without a lot of money, but again, I'd be lying if I said money doesn't matter. The first thing I'm gonna mention here is that there's gonna be 2 types of capital that I'm gonna talk about, right? So the number 1, or the first type, is just gonna be the amount of capital you have coming in, right? So like, you're like, hey, what should I do with, I've got $5,000, I've got $1,000, I've got $10,000, right? So you're starting capital, right? So that's definitely something to consider. The next part that I would consider is going to be your cash flow. So how much cash do you have coming in, right? Do you sell shoes already before you're getting into botting? I think some of you know from watching some of my videos, I still sell over 1,000 pairs of shoes from outlets, discount stores a year. Do you have cash flow? Are you using money from something else and funneling it into this, right? So there's 2 things I'm going to talk about. Is going to be number 1 is how much money you have starting off. So right, your starting capital. And number 2 is your cash flow situation. Both are obviously very important, right? It is important how much money you have to deploy at first, but then it's also important how much money or how dependable that cash flow is that you have coming in. Because again, you've got to remember that just because you get shoes, depending on the shoe, there's obviously a lot of factors, but that doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to make that much money, right? You don't always make that much money on pairs of shoes, right? When you're botting, you don't always hit Union Dunks where you're making several $100s in profit a pair. Sometimes it's Yeezys where you're making $20, $30 a pair. So you need to consider too, you could have a lot of money, but if all of these expenses, right? Let's say you buy a bunch of bots, all these proxies, all these accounts, all this stuff. If you don't have any cash flow, right? It's great you had all that money at the beginning, but you need to take that into account too. So your starting capital really shouldn't all be spent because you need some cushion, right? And you still need money to buy the shoes. So you do also need to consider how both of them are important, right? They're both very important and they both do matter. If you are fortunate enough to have like $5,000, $10,000 to start off, that's awesome, right? That's awesome. But again, I can't stress enough that if you have a lot of great, your rating across this board, right? Mindset, capital, network, and botting resources. You can have all the capital in the world, but if the other three are awful, it's not going to work. I have seen this play out many times. I hear people come in, they buy 2 or 3 bots, they buy all these proxies, they get in these groups, and they're like, what's a task? It's like, dude, that's like, even if you have that amount of money, that's not how you should deploy it. You should be patient, right? You should get in a group, you should be in a group for a month, you should try to get some shoes manually, you should look at what bots work, what sites you want to run for. There's a lot that goes into that. So you do just need to consider, right, that when you're going into this, just because you have a bunch of money, I've seen so many people over the years come in with a lot of cash, buy many things that are, again, going to turn into expenses, right? Bots do have renewals, proxies run out, servers have monthly or hourly costs. All of that starts to add up. So you just need to consider that, and again, I'm just warning you, $10,000 does seem like a lot. It seems like that's enough money to clearly do something in this. But I've seen people blow through $10,000 in a month or two. So you need to consider that if you've got a lot of money, or you've got a lot of starting capital, or you have a lot of cash flow, that's great. But you should still go about this in a common sense or a logical manner and be like, okay, I've got a lot of capital, that's great. But if I don't know the skill, I don't know anybody in this community, so you don't have any connections, and I don't have any botting resources, you need to just be patient and build those other 3 categories up some and just give yourself some time. And like I said, be patient. So just please keep in mind, it's awesome if you have a lot of money starting off, but that doesn't guarantee you much because there's a lot of other factors that are going to go into your success that you can't buy. Now, another thing to mention here with the capital. Obviously, too, if you really look at what a lot of botters are doing, some people aren't deploying their own capital, right? So I need to mention that here too, right? If you get, an Amex credit card or a Capital One credit card, you can make a bunch of VCCs, right? And you're spending credit, right? So if you know you're getting a shoe that you know is going to sell for a profit, right? You know that you're going to be able to get rid of it. That is a great way to go about, a great thing to do, right? Use other people's money. Very smart, right? I do it. It works very well. So just want to mention that here, right? It's not just cash, right? If you are able to use your good credit or build your credit up over time, you can get other methods of accessing credit, right? Or accessing capital. So it's not all about cash. You can use other things to your advantage if you do have good credit or work on building that up over time. But I do need to mention that here, right? It's not just all about cash, how much you have at the beginning or cash flow. Do you have access to credit, and can you use VCCs with that access to credit? Because if you can, that's going to help you a lot in this category. Obviously, if you are executing this like to perfection and in an ideal format, you have cash and you do have credit, right? So I'm not saying pick one, try to get both, right? Try to have cash flow, try to have credit, try to have a lot of different accesses and different methods of accessing capital. So just always be thinking about that. How can I get more credit? How can I get better access to capital? And how can I get different cards that will work better on different sites? And just again, make that work to your advantage. I know I repeat this often on this channel, but if you aren't supplementing your business with shoes from outlets or discount stores or foot stores, I think you're making a big mistake, especially in the beginning when you don't know that you're going to hit, right? Even if you've been botting for 6 months, right? I'd argue that the majority of people that have been botting for 6 months are barely making money, if that, right? Just off botting, just when you take everything into consideration. So I would recommend really looking to try to exhaust all options when you're starting off. If you can go to the outlets a couple times a week, make a couple $100, put that into botting, right? That's really all you need if you go about this in a smart way and scale up appropriately. You don't need thousands and thousands of dollars, but it really would help if you could get a little cash flow from, again, sneakers, which you know. So again, I still do that to this day. More than 50% of my business is from outlets, discount stores, foot stores. It really made it a lot easier when I started off botting that I had a cushion, right? I had cash flow. I could give myself time and wasn't under the stress that if I don't hit by the end of the month, I'm done. That's got to be the situation for some people, right? Some people need to go into that situation because they don't have that much money. But again, the more runway you have before you run out of money, the better. So look at every possible option you have to make more money and generate some cash flow so that your business has a longer runway and you have a greater chance of success. I know this isn't fair, right? Life's not fair. This is not a cheap game to get into, right? Like I said, you can start off with not a lot of money and just build up over time at an appropriate rate and get to a point where you have lots of bots through, again, just time and effort. But this is tough, right? This is a game where when you do have access to a lot of bots and groups and information, it really, really helps. So, it's not fair, but it's just something you've got to deal with and you've got to plan for long term. If you're coming into this with not a lot of capital, you need to start planning how you're going to build up that capital or how you're going to build up to being able to access that capital over time, because this is expensive and you've got to spend to earn in this. So you've got to just make peace with that. I would just deploy this quote here, right? If other people have made it from your situation, you can too. And there's undoubtedly hundreds of people, thousands of people that have made it from whatever your situation is, whether that's you don't have much, whether that's you've got 10, 20 grand, whatever the case is, right? Other people have made it from that situation. So you need to figure out through learning and just putting in the time how you can make it work for you too. And moving on to the number 3 thing that I think plays a massive role in somebody's success, and that is going to be your network. Keeping the old adage alive, your network is your net worth. Again, this is a rather broad subject, but I'm going to kind of break this down into 2 general subjects, and that's going to be your social network and your selling network. What I mean by how big is your social network, what I kind of gets down to is how many people do you have on Discord to talk to, ask questions to, and how advanced are those individuals, right? So when you're starting off, you might get into a free cook group, right? And that's appropriate. There's nothing wrong with being in a free cook group. Am I in any free cook groups anymore? No, because the information there is not adequate to what I'm trying to pull off. If you need to be in a free cook group, that is fine. I'm not telling you not to do that. But you do need to just be aware that like the people in those cook groups, you're not going to get the information that you get from a group like AK Chefs or Notify or Carbon, right? Like the groups, some of the groups that I'm in just have better access to information. So you need to be aware of that, right? The better the groups you're in, the more access you have to people who are hitting larger amounts of shoes. And that's what I mean by your social network, right? Like who can you ask questions to, right? Who do you have access to? Who's answering those questions? Are they hitting 10 pairs? If they're hitting 10 pairs, they can probably answer your questions, right? When you're hitting no pairs. Somebody who's hitting 10 pairs is leagues ahead of somebody who's hitting 0. Now, if you're hitting 10 pairs, or you're that person who's hitting 0, and then you get to 10 pairs, you might need to get into another group, because at that point, that person might not be able to answer your questions because they haven't gone where you're trying to go, right? So you need to just be aware that over time, right, stay in Discord, stay on Twitter, Instagram, build your network, right? Build your social connections and people that you can lean on for advice, you can ask questions to, you can see what they're doing, right? Build up the amount of connections you have in a social manner within this community. This is another thing that is going to take time, right? You can't build up a year's rapport with someone in a group in a month, right? But again, the more time you spend in a group, the more questions you ask, the more polite you are, right? The more you are just a member of the community and build up your kind of identity, your profile, just to somebody that's in the group that people know are running, that will help you, right? It takes time, but you need to do that over time. And like I said, live in these Discord groups as much as you can and just build up a rapport with individuals who are better than you so that, again, you can ask them questions, you can have better access to things, right? You're in more Discord groups, you got better access to giveaways, right? Back to number 4, resources. So again, the bigger your network, the more access you're gonna have to things, right? So it makes things easier. So it's really something to consider and something to keep in mind, that you need to keep meeting people, because the more people you know, the easier time you're gonna have just running, setting up, just asking questions, getting any questions answered, just all of that is going to be a lot easier if you know more people, right? Another way to build up your social network, again, would be to start documenting, right? Start a channel. You don't have to be hitting 100 pairs of shoes to start a channel. One of my biggest regrets is that I didn't start a channel when I started reselling like 4 to 5 years ago, before I even started botting. I really wish I would have started a channel by then, because I would have been a lot farther along. I know I would have continued, just like I'm going to continue now, had I started then. So all I'm saying is a great way to do this is just to post. Post on Instagram, post videos, post live cops, right? Tweet, engage with the community. The more you do that, right? And to what extent you do that, the faster you're going to be able to build this up. So even if you aren't good at this, even if you're just starting off, document it, film it, and be like, I'm not good at this. This is my first try. Here it is. I know it's kind of embarrassing sometimes, but it's not, because all of us fail. So I don't really get the issue with posting failures. People who don't do that, I think it's kind of ridiculous. But don't be worried about that, right? Start documenting, kind of put yourself out there, and I promise you that it's going to pay you back more than the time that you put into it. So just a really good piece of advice that I really wish I would have taken or done is just start documenting earlier, even if you don't have all the answers. That's not what you're documenting. You're documenting the journey. The other massive factor in your network is going to be your selling network, right? So what I mean by that is, what type of selling network do you have via selling channels, right? Do you sell online? Do you sell in person, right? Do you sell on social media? Do you do all of those? How well and how quickly and at what price are you able to sell your inventory, right? So what is your selling network? Like I said, this is a massive factor in someone's success, and I think it's something that a lot of people don't think about. I think people know it's a skill. I think they know that it's gonna take a while to learn, it's gonna cost a lot of money, they need to meet people, but I don't think they really realize, like, it really matters how quickly you can get rid of shoes and at what price, right? So it does take time to meet bulk buyers and build up relationships and get to a point where you get so many of a shoe that it's okay that you're taking a little bit of a discount because you're selling so many. So again, this really is something that you need to be very just cognizant of and try to build up over time, because it does matter, right? You want a lot of bulk buyers. You want a lot of selling platforms with good ratings to be able to get rid of shoes. Really, that's where I do the most of my selling. I don't think my selling network is that strong. I really do, just because I have a lot of other things to do. I go to stores, I go to the post office every day, I film, right? I post on other social medias. So like, I could do a better job in this, and I am going to work on that, but I really sell the majority of my shoes online, right? I just put them up on GOAT, StockX, Poshmark, Mercari, Amazon. I sell on all of those. I'm looking to add a couple more, like Grailed, Facebook, Instagram. I'm looking to work into that. So, you know, just something to consider, right? You really need to try to build this up over time. So just always be on the lookout for people in your area that you could sell to in person. Look for stores in your area. Look for working on trying to add different sites to what you're able to sell on. Just the more eyeballs you have on your product and the more options you have to sell, the better, because that means when you do get to a point where you are hitting a lot of a shoe, you can get rid of them quickly, get the money back, and then deploy that on another drop. So it does matter how quickly you can get rid of shoes, and that's what I would say would be your selling network. Just like everything on this, right? You can be very good at this to varying extents in very different ways. There are some people who don't sell online at all and absolutely kill it, right? They sell everything they sell in person, stores, people they know. Great. I know people that are doing extremely well doing that. I also know people that don't sell anything in person, pretty much me and other people. I'm doing great, I promise you, right? Other people are doing great. It doesn't matter what you do, right? But you need to have a plan, right? You need to be like, I might not do this, but it's because I'm really good at this. So again, just be aware that there are a lot of options, right? You can sell in person, you can sell to stores, a lot of different platforms online, right? Social media, there's a lot of places to sell, but you do need to be aware of it, and you do need to have a plan for how you're going to improve your selling network over time, and just have a strategy and just have a plan. Like I said, there is no right way to do this, but I do sell some in person. I really am trying to look at going out to some stores in the area and building up some relationships with them. But the majority of my selling, 98% of my selling, is online, and I sell on eBay, Poshmark, GOAT, StockX, and Amazon. I have an account on Mercari. I need to use that more. But again, just the more eyeballs you have on your product, your inventory, the faster it's going to sell. And just my final piece of advice, right? When you are new or when you're in these Discord communities, you need to be able to kind of laugh at yourself, right? If you make a mistake in a Discord community, you're going to catch some heat, right? If you do some dumb shit, you're going to catch some heat. But just laugh at yourself, right? If you are just able to be like, damn, that was dumb. Because I've done some dumb shit, right? I was the person that was in these groups talking in the wrong channel, posting stuff in the wrong channel, because I didn't know. But I could laugh at myself and just be like, yeah, I'm an idiot, right? I don't know what I'm doing right now. So just be polite to people, right? Be humble. Know that you don't know what you're doing. Just say thank you, right? And everything's going to be okay. I see some people get kicked out over the dumbest stuff, like the dumbest shit, right? I just don't get it, right? Even though I do, I'm like, ooh, that was kind of not nicest answer. But whatever, right? You're wrong. You don't know what you're doing. So if you're nice to people in these groups, right, it's really going to get you a long way. It's really just a good tip for life, but try to apply it here. And finally, coming in at number 4 on our list, and that's going to be the 4th category that I think obviously plays a big role in somebody's success, and that is going to be the resources they have botting wise. I think that people think this is the most important factor. I think that people think, after watching a couple videos that, all I need is Valor and, some ISPs and I'm going to be able to hit 2. It doesn't work like that. I'll go back to the Call of Duty analogy that I used earlier. If you don't know what you're doing, I could give you every bot, every proxy, all the Gmails, and you would not hit. Would it help you move along faster? 100%. But you do need to keep in mind that I think this is the least important factor on the list, because if you do the other things, you're going to build up your resources over time, right? If you are diligent and constantly learning and learning at a fast rate because you're applying yourself and using a growth mindset, you're going to build up your network, right? Your skill set, right? Your capital, because you're going to be eager to figure out how other people are doing things. All of those things are a way bigger factor than the resources you have, because even if you have the resources, if you don't have the other 3 things, it doesn't matter. So just remember, right, that even though this is obviously a big factor, right, I'm not going to sit here and say that the people that are running and hitting hundreds of pairs could do that with NSB. They couldn't. They would be hitting a lot with NSB, but you do need those resources when you get to a certain point to keep excelling. But this is something that I would not be that worried about when you're starting off, right? Like I mentioned earlier, I would just get into a cook group if you're starting off and just be in the group for a month. Don't buy a bot. Don't buy proxies. You don't have a clue what you're doing, right? Be in there, watch what happens over a month, ask some questions, maybe get a group buy for a month or a week, and play it like that at a smart, appropriate rate. But again, if you don't know what you're doing, you can have all the resources in the world, it's not going to matter. It's a little deceiving when you watch a live cop sometimes, because a lot of the live cops that I watched when I was learning, I was frustrated with, and I think some people don't like my videos because they're long, but I was frustrated when I was watching live cops because I wasn't seeing the whole thing, right? Like I wasn't confused what it looked like when the bot hit. I was confused as to when do I start? What are the Gmails? Should it be in bot? What are the delays? There's a lot of other questions that you just don't get answered by watching a video or listening to somebody say what they did, right? It looks a lot like press play, yay, like we're hitting everything. You don't see the day or two's worth of work that went into planning for the drop. You don't see the hours it took to set up, right? You don't see the 50 to 100 hours it took the multiple months before that to learn what to do and to be confident in what you're doing during a drop. So again, I know it can be misleading. That's why I try to post first my mistakes. I really try to post everything so you see like you're going to struggle some, and even when you get to a point where it looks like you're doing really well, you're still going to struggle. But you do need to keep in mind, again, just that like this is something that's going to take time, right? And it's something that as you build up, right, it's going to get easier using better tools, right? The better the Gmails, the better the bot, the better the proxies. But again, it's something you need to build up at an appropriate rate to. And if you do that, you can succeed. But just remember that this is something that like you do need the resources, but you need to, again, just have a plan as to how you're going to get there. Doesn't mean you need to have a bunch of bots even after a year. I owned like a bot or 2 after the first year that I was botting. So even I would have a realistic idea of what you can accomplish. Don't not try because I'm telling you it's difficult, but just have a realistic expectation that, okay, I'm going to try to get a bot or 2 by the end of the year. I'm going to take time. I'm going to build up enough capital to where it makes sense. Maybe after my second year or so, I'll have 1 or 2 more, right? Think about it like that. Don't think I need to get all the bots first and then everything will be good. Think I need to raise my kind of skill level in all of these categories, right? I need to learn what I'm doing. I need to network, right? I need to learn how I'm going to deploy capital or build up some cash flow. And then I need to build up my resources. Like I mentioned one more time, even if you come into this with 10 to 20K, I wouldn't even buy a bot the first month. Like I said, I would just get into a group, just watch, right? Just observe what's going on. And then you can make some educated decisions from there. You can learn a lot in a month. If you're just in the groups, right? You listen to what's going on, you get in the voice chat, you get in the Q&A, you run manually, you can learn a lot and save a lot of money. Just trust me. If you are getting into this and you have any amount of money, right? Just get in a good group. Get in AK Chefs, get in Notify. I would never say this, but there are invites available on Discord servers, resale servers, right? I would never tell you to do that. Never. But they're there. I would get into a good group, right? And I would just observe, watch, and then make some decisions when you have information, right? So as you build up your other three categories, your knowledge, your network, your capital, then start to think, what bots should I deploy this capital to get now that I know, what I know after a month or two being in a group. Another thing to mention that I still struggle with to this day, because you're always scaling to a certain extent, is just the fact that you do need to continue to build up your resources over time, right? But that more is not always necessarily better. If you are still struggling to hit a couple pairs on Yeezy Supply with one bot, don't think that doubling your task count and getting 2 or 3 more bots is going to solve the problem. You need to, again, view this as scaling at an appropriate rate and be like, I need to get down where I know how to use this one bot really well. Once I know what I'm doing and could almost do this in my sleep, right? I can press start. I know where everything goes. I know the general time to start. I know what it should look like. I know what's going wrong based on the information I'm getting. Once you've got a bot down, then move on to another one. But don't think that just because you add more, it's going to be better. If you don't know how to hit with one bot, you're going to have a harder time with 2 to 3 because it's just going to be too overwhelming. So again, more is not always better, right? Less is more sometimes. Do the best botters have the best resources? Yes. Did they build that up over time by building up their capital, their skill set, and their network? Yes. Don't make the mistake of throwing all your money away and only focusing on buying the right things. There are more important things to worry about. It's great you have cash, it's great you have capital, but there are other things that you need to work on developing and have a plan for doing so. Anyways, just kind of closing statements here. I do, again, want to make clear that, right, this isn't some set in stone evaluation system, but I do think that this is kind of a good framework to think about how you resell and how you can improve. All of these factors are very important, right? And I think that to improve, we need to have an accurate assessment of where we are. And I think that this is a good way to kind of break down your skill set and look at what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. So just kind of repeating and bringing everything back together, right? You need to have a plan for how you're going to spend a lot of time and how you're going to go about learning, right? What are your weaknesses, right? What don't you understand? What were your mistakes, right? Just how you're going to just get better at the skill of botting, right? Improve your knowledge base. How are you going to have a plan to improve your capital, right? Do you need to improve your credit? Do you need to go out and find some shoes to start generating capital? Or do you need to finish generating the starting capital that you want before you start, right? What is your plan for building your network, right? What groups are you going to get into? How are you building your kind of rapport with other people and building your profile in those groups? Are you posting? Are you posting live cops, right? Are you making an effort, right? A conscious effort to get out there and meet people? And finally, what is your plan for building up your botting resources? Are you going to rent? Are you going to get group buys? What proxies are you going to get, right? All of that takes conscious thought. And like I said, you should always be looking at how you can plan to improve each of those 4 categories. Something I want to mention too is just that sometimes it looks like people are doing really well at reselling or botting, but remember, you can kind of like bleed yourself dry over several months, right? Some people are getting shoes that are in awful sizes that they don't have a selling network to get rid of them on or deploy them on or sell them on at an appropriate rate. And they're like losing a couple dollars a shoe or like $5 to $10 a shoe. If you come in with 10K and somehow get a hang of botting quickly and are doing that, you can do that for a couple months, maybe a year. Maybe you get good enough at it over that time that you're able to get yourself out of that hole, right? But you do need to remember that, like, look at how long people have been doing things, the level of success they're having, like really try to break down what other people are doing, right? If somebody's been doing this for years, you can kind of trust what you're seeing, right? Because they haven't lost all their money, right? 85% of businesses go out of business within the first 2 to 3 years, right? So if somebody's been doing this for a couple years, they've got some skin in the game. If somebody hits one time and is like, I got this down, it's not really the case, right? So you need to pay attention to what people are hitting, what sizes are they going for? Are they hitting shoes that, they better have a great selling network. That's what I think, at least sometimes when I see people, is they better have some local buyers that are buying some of these shoes. Now, do some people have that? Yes. Are some people slowly going bankrupt or going out of business, buying shoes that they aren't going to make money off of and then selling them at a loss? Those people exist too. I really hope that you view the 4 things that I went over today as problems to be solved, not issues that you have that can't be corrected, right? So just really try to view them that way and just go about having a plan to improve them. And finally, a huge thanks to all of my sponsors. That is a result of me trying to build up my selling network, build up my social network, build up the skill set, right? All of those things have resulted in me finally getting some sponsors. So again, I do and am working on how to display this better, right? I do have them over my shoulder here. So again, a huge shout out to Live, OCULUS, Petty, and the BotSpot. The BotSpot is the place that I do all of my renting now. I will have links for all of those 4 companies in the notes below, so feel free to check those out, right? The first 3 are for PROXIES, all of them great. I use all of them successfully, highly recommend all of them. And then if you are looking for a safe place to rent bots, I highly recommend the BotSpot. That is now where I do all of my renting. Anyways, that's all for this video today. I hope this was helpful. I think it can be a useful framework to think about how you're doing reselling and how you can improve. So, leave any comments, questions, concerns, debate topics, what have you in the comment section below, and I will try to get back to you as quickly as possible. And feel free to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Handles are in the comment section below. I post on there daily, so if you're looking for more content, I have it there. And just check back in a couple days. I should have a couple live cops, just random ones from the past couple days up then. So check back for that. And until next time, see ya.